Alright, no more monkeying around. We got some boxes to open. This is probably going to be my last video before Nationals, so I was like, what do I want to talk about today? And the only thing that really came to mind that I want to talk about before Nationals, surprise, is Nationals. I figured this would be a good chance to talk about some of my thoughts on, like, the metagame and how it's developed and everything, because I honestly think it's a pretty interesting metagame development that we've had. Also, I have 5 boxes randomly here because I have an extra box from Jimmy winning a skirmish, and he just got a box as prize support. So we're going to have an extra box, so we're going to have a nice long talk today. Starting off with a double Majestic pack, that's pretty good. And then also, as far as the box opening goes, we are looking for still the couple Marvels that I'm missing, and we are looking for Diadem. That's what we're looking for. Man, I just, like, effed this whole thing up. Oh, it's because I didn't actually have a foil in my first one, because it went into the separate pile. That's why I'm screwed up. Alright, I figured it out. Also, one of my viewers and close friend, Julian, mentioned that he had an idea for the name of my box opening videos. I was looking for a name for, like, a playlist for these, and he had the great idea of Lost in Thought after my last video, and how often I lose my train of thought on these by getting distracted by the polls. I really like that. I think I'm gonna call these Lost in Thought from now on. Thank you for the idea. Awesome. We got a extended art widespread destruction. Great hit to start off with. I think this is like 35 bucks, so pretty happy to see that. Sorry, I had to adjust my focus there for a sec. So, yeah, metagame thoughts for Nationals. Okay, so as I see it, Nationals, this metagame, we have some gatekeepers of the format. Namely, we have Lexi, we have Dromai. I got really excited there thinking that I got like 40 bucks. Nope, just a different sad blue. We got Lexi, we got Dromai, we got Icelander, we got Bravo, and a singular card somehow managed to make it into the category of gatekeepers, Warmongers. Never thought I'd see that. Just a single card. Got a cold foil Radiant Raiment. Is it Raiment? Is that how that's pronounced? Someone in the comments, please tell me how that's pronounced, because I'm stupid. Fantastic box. You know, while you're in there, just say congrats, Pheano, for opening money. We got a Crown of Poverty. Some people don't like calling it that. I don't know, it's so funny. No one's actually... Their comment was like, oh, you don't want to call people poors for playing with the cheaper one. Bro, you're still spending 60 bucks on a card, you're not poor. It's just a funny name to call the card. But I think they were on stream when they were saying that. And it's like, that's fair, you can't really say that as an official stream thing. Anyways, so gatekeepers of the format. Kind of going down the list, talking about them a little bit. Lexi, it pushes out a lot of the other aggro decks from the format, or just like less efficient decks. Basically, Lexi is one of the best aggro decks the game has ever seen. It's very powerful in what it does, just inherently. But then also has the whole ice aspect of the deck. So a lot of other aggro decks just end up falling short in the matchup into Lexi. But then also, Lexi really punishes decks that don't want to block. That's crazy, what aggro decks want to do, not block. So it has a lot of advantages into the aggro mirrors, and where it is one of the most popular aggro decks in the game, or the most popular right now, that makes it very hard to justify bringing any other aggro deck to the format if you just lose to the premier aggro deck. Next is Dromai. Dromai, it's just the illusionist thing. It's just asking the question, can you deal with board state? Can you deal with the threat of me blocking pretty aggressively and playing to this hyper late game? Dromai is just always a powerful deck. Dromai does inherently powerful things, and Dromai is very well positioned into Lexi specifically. And the other thing with that is Lexi... that was box 1, by the way. Pretty good. I think we made our money back on that one. Lexi pushes out a lot of the decks from the metagame that Dromai doesn't want to see, which is another real reason why Dromai is very strong right now. Dromai doesn't want to see Viserai or Ninjas, and what did I just say about the aggro decks? So Dromai's really appreciating the meta that we're in right now. Next is Icelander. It's kind of similar to Lexi in the fact of you're an ice deck. You're kind of putting that on your opponent to be like, do you know how to play into this? And a lot of that type of stuff is just like, kind of like Fatigue, where it's just like, do you have the knowledge to be able to beat this? It's just asking that a question of your opponent. Just the level 1, do you understand how to beat Frostbites? And then it's the, okay, do you understand how to play this matchup? And that's just like, you're posing a lot of questions to your opponent before the game even starts. And got a double Meeps pack. That's pretty cool. Got a foil Meeps and a regular Meeps. Meep. I really want to play this card. I also need to make an emote for stream when I start streaming again of Meeps. Anyways, we were talking about Icelander. I didn't lose my train of thought that time. I want you guys to be proud of me for a moment there that I didn't lose it. So Icelander, it poses questions to the opponent. It also does some powerful things, and when everyone's playing fair, she's better at playing fair than other decks, is kind of how I like to think about it, where it's like, when the game gets fair, if that makes sense, one of the best things that you can be doing when you can't find something unfair to do is just present the most numbers on cards as possible, and that's all she's trying to do, get 4 out of her cards, and that's very powerful. Got, not the one we're looking for. Unlucky. I don't actually own this card, though, so, like, I'm happy to get my first copy of it. Got a Rainbow Foil Diadem. Double Legendary case, though. I can't be that unhappy. Though, I think one of these boxes is the extra 5th box, so that doesn't really count. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Anywho. And then, of course, you've got the combo kill, or the extra reach that you can have at the end of the game. Like, all these different axes that Icelander can operate off of. And also, it got a Cold Foil Reality Refractor and a Rainbow Foil Chorus of Iron Song. That was a good pack. It was a good case. And she also does a similar thing of further pushing out aggro decks, potentially. Though, I think we're starting to see aggro decks being able to combat Icelander a little bit. If you watched the AGE, you would have seen that the Briars were actually putting up a pretty decent fight into Icelander. It seems like that matchup has changed a little bit with the extra Arcane Barrier that you can have in the matchup. That's definitely a game changer. You just, like, get to free roll AB3, pretty much. That's pretty strong. I think that's pretty much everything I have to say about Icelander as far as that goes. And then you got Bravo, you know, it's classic Guardian. You just, like, block, and then you throw some numbers at your opponent, they give you some space, you throw some disruption, try to get them in a cycle of blocking for a while. You can also set up a nice late game pitch stack. Not much to say there, it's just posing the question of, do you know how to beat me if I'm blocking pretty aggressively? And a lot of people don't know how to do that. You know, if you watched the calling coverage, there were a lot of people playing into Bravo that would just, like, monkey their hand into the Bravo and just be like, what happened? How come I couldn't cross the finish line? They didn't know how to beat block 12. They weren't setting up for bigger cycles or anything like that. They were just pushing buttons, pushing their cards forward, and hoping that it got them there. And you just can't do that. So it's a knowledge check, kind of like I was talking about with frostbites and taxation and such, of do you know how to beat just getting taxed? Well, this is, do you know how to beat block 12? And that's a big part of this format, honestly. Lexi struggles a bit into that. If you don't know what you're doing, you're just, like, pushing buttons. I think that when you know what you're doing, though, that quickly flips. I think Lexi's very good in fatigue scenarios, because you have the ability to go over the top of your opponent's block value and just push such crazy rounds. Like, how are you supposed to fatigue someone that has multiple, like, 30 damage rounds? Just, like, that, you just can't do that. Granted, you have got another legendary. Holy moly, you got a Soulbound Resolve. Not a card we're looking for, unfortunately, but, you know, we take the dollary dues. Just, could I get a flippin' Marvel? Or I'll even take the Poop Soup Diadem. I know it's not worth that much, but I do personally want the card. One time for the one time. Can we get the cards we're looking for? This is how many boxes? We've only hit one of the cards we're looking for. Unluckers. Got a Rainbow Foil Majestic, though. My complaining gave me something. Where was I? There's Lost in Thought. We found it. Finishing talking about Bravo, I don't think I really have much else to say about that. Lexi's very good into blocking scenarios, but you have to have the knowledge to do that. And then Warmongers, just the card Warmongers. That card has single-handedly gatekeeped a ton of decks from just being competitively viable, so long as people are just blindly jamming 3 copies in their decks in a lot of cases. It pretty much makes it impossible to play Runeblade or Azalea, and it is something that was very good into Lexi initially, but now we see the Lexis start to adjust their builds to play around it a little bit, either making themselves less susceptible to it, or just playing Trench and just trying to ignore it, potentially playing a few less of the non-attack cards, so that way if it happens and they're holding them, they're not like holding them that often. Now, there is something to be gained there, where when the Lexi's playing not Tunic and they're playing less non-attacks or things that let them play more cards and push more damage, that does make them easier to fatigue, but that's like another level to this that I don't really want to get into in this like few-minute conversation about the card Warmongers. I went more into detail about Warmongers in another video. I'll put a annotation on the top over here. If you would like to hear my thoughts on the card, go check it out over there. But yeah, pretty much Warmongers has pushed out Runeblades and Azalea from the meta. I think Briar is still one that can be kind of played into this, as you're not as hosed by it when that happens all the time, but like Viserai feels pretty awful into that card, as well as Azalea. There's potentially adjustments that can be made. You know, I'm not going to say that we can't see that. We did see, I think it was Chris was playing some Azalea recently to some amount of success. I wasn't really paying attention too much to that, though. Now, one interesting thing that can come out of this, though, I'm not sure if we'll actually see this or not, is the potential of, does the metagame's head go up so far up its own butt from these types of things, where we see these decks come back into the meta. So, like, I have some Dark Horse picks for decks that could potentially do well at Nationals this season. One of them is actually the Runeblades. Like, I think we could see Viserai do well at a Nationals if the metagame goes up its own butt. Where, okay, if everyone's going to play Warmongers, then the decks that are, like Lexi, that are screwed by Warmongers, are going to adjust their deck to play around it. But then if all the Lexis are playing in such a way where they're not screwed by Warmongers, then potentially people start cutting Warmongers from their decks because they already got the desired result. They made the Lexi play in an inefficient way. But then if no one's playing Warmongers anymore, well, then we might see the deck screwed by that card find a way to come back into the meta. And so, like, that's an interesting thing that could happen, you know, by me talking about it. That could potentially cause that not to happen, because then there's that level of awareness of it. But who knows? We'll have to see what actually happens with that, but that's something that could happen. One of my other Dark Horse picks is actually Ninja. Kind of, again, for the Warmongers thing, you're a deck that's not screwed by Warmongers, and I think Ninja actually has a relatively good matchup into a couple of the meta decks. You're pretty good into Dromai. I thought that a really good Katsu was tough as Lexi. I mentioned this in my video a little while back with Team Poland, how, like, I couldn't take a game off of them. Now, I haven't really played that matchup again since, and Lexi is very different now than it used to be. You know, it's far more focused on the ice cards, but also Lexi got a little bit weaker. The builds are different now. It's hard to say. But I think that's, like, something potentially there, and I'm sure that you could potentially get Bravo and Icelander to a decent spot, but I'm not going to theory craft on that too much. I'm not a Ninja stan. I believe someone could figure that out. I think Levia is also a deck that people are sleeping on right now. I think Levia is a very powerful deck that does inherently above rate and powerful things, and it seems like people aren't really... I don't know if it's that they're not respecting it, but, like, we're not really seeing that many people put up results with Levia. It's like Pat and some other people that have been putting up results with the deck, and beyond that, we're really not seeing that much with Levia. I think the deck's strong, so, like, I would not be in the least bit surprised if we saw Levia's either taking some Nationals or topping Nationals. Good deck is good. And the last of the Dark Horse decks that I have, weirdly enough, it's actually Prism. Now, before you don't click off. Stay with me. Let me cook. Alright, so if in theory you 3-0 your draft pods, you only have to win what? You like go 4-2 in CC? You could gem format into really good pairings for Prism of just like you just get like back-to-back decks that Prism feasts on, like Guardian, and I think Lexi's actually a pretty decent matchup, but I haven't put that much time into the matchup. I think we could potentially see someone do well with Prism because they just like hit the lottery in Gem. It could happen. Do I think it's a good pick for the tournament? Hell no. Y'all know my opinion on Prism right now. I'm very upset about it, but could happen. Could happen. I think the real issue with that is before, at least with your bad matchups, they were like playable and you could outskill sometimes. I feel like you don't really have the ability to do that necessarily with New Prism, but I could be wrong. But it's a weird meta. It's like, it feels like the level 1 is play Lexi because it's just probably the most powerful deck in the game, and then it's play decks that beat Lexi is the next thing, as you know, obviously as any meta should beat. But then usually the next part of that is play decks that beat the decks that beat the deck. If you know, ooh, got a Warmongers, nice. Finally have a play set of them. Still need to get 3 more for Jimmy, but we'll figure that out later. Maybe the meta goes up its own butt and we don't end up playing them, you know? Save me some money. That'd be nice. So the deck beating the deck that beats the deck, that type of thing, where it's like, okay, let's just make an example of like an old meta. Like the level 1 is you play Runeblade, then the level 2 is that you play Guardian because that beats Runeblade, for example. Just it doesn't matter if this is actually correct. I'm just trying to like make an example for you guys. And then the next level of that is you play Prism because Prism beats the Guardians. Actually, that actually was a good example because that was the first Nationals season. We saw Briar was the best deck in the game, and then Old Hymns and Lexis came out to try to counter Briar. And then we actually saw Prism win a Nationals, even though Prism was like basically Prism Briar was basically unwinnable for Prism. It was just like a cursed matchup. But a Prism ended up taking an entire Nationals. I think it was like New Zealand or something like that. Don't quote me on that. And you know, when you're in a meta like that where everyone's trying to beat the deck, but you beat the decks that beats the decks, you can beat up on those people if you get lucky in your matchmaking. But that, I don't know how much of that we're really going to see, because it feels like it's really hard to do that in this particular format, because the 2 tiers of the meta of like the best thing you could be doing and the thing that beats that, and then the surrounding decks that people are just still playing, like Dromai and things like that. It feels like the combination of all of these decks really push out things that could counter some of these things, where it's like, if I think the level 1's Lexi and the level 2 is people playing, I don't know, Bravo, then my answer to Bravo could be, I don't know, a Phi or something like that. Don't take too much into what I'm saying of like the actual matchup spread of those decks. I'm just trying to make an example again. And if that's the case, then you play the Ninja deck to try to beat the Guardian or whatever. But then all the surrounding decks beat up on Ninja, and the best deck also beats up on Ninja, and then all these other cards being played beat up on Ninja. So it's like really tough to actually do that, but I think there is some space to do that. I think you just got to get lucky on your pairings. But like, I think Runeblade's one of those ones where it's like, specifically because of Warmongers, it's really difficult to do that, where it's like, I think Viscera is probably pretty good into something like Bravo and Dromai, but then all these decks are just playing Warmongers, so it's just tough for you to just have a good tournament, because at some point you're just going to get hosed by the card, because you're going to have enough people flip coins into you trying to time walk you, and it'll eventually cost you games. Got a Cold Foil Bastion of Unity. Ooh. Fancy. Not a Marvel. It's kind of unlucky that we didn't hit a Marvel in these. That's like 8 boxes in a row with 0 Marvel, right? I don't think we hit one last time. And still no Fable. That's, like, actually crazy. I think we're, over 60 boxes and no Fable. Come on, LSS. Why do you hate me? Never lucky. Never lucky and lost in thought. That's my 2 things. But yeah, that's pretty much it for my thoughts on the metagame. You know, we got the Gatekeepers. I got some dark horses for you. I think it's really hard for a lot of these decks to actually break out and be successful, though. It's really tough. Like, I think Azuri is a deck that, like, has potential into some of the meta decks, but then, like, just, like, eats shit into other decks, and it's really tough to have a good run on that. And I don't feel like you're doing inherently powerful things as Azuri. I think you're really just preying on your opponents not understanding how to beat what you're doing. And I feel like there's a lot of these types of things where it's really tough. But what do you guys think? Are there any decks that you think we might see break out? What are you bringing to your nationals if you want to share that? And do you have any thoughts on the metagame? Do you like this meta? That's like not something that I really talked about at all. Like, are people even enjoying it? I have been enjoying the gameplay of it personally, but I haven't really liked the meta that much. Like, for a tournament, I have not really liked it as much because it feels like there's some weird shenanigans going on with the meta, like warmongers that make it not great. So, like, but from, like, an armory perspective of just, like, playing, I feel like I can play anything and be fine unless I'm playing Runeblade into warmongers. So, like, I like it from that aspect. It doesn't feel like you have to play these things or you're just gonna, like, not be allowed to play the game. It's felt like that's been the case a couple times. I feel like you're allowed to play whatever right now. It's like everything's pretty even in power level, but there are obviously better decks in the metagame. But what are you guys thinking? I'd like to hear your thoughts on the meta. And as always, thank you so much for watching.